Hey everyone, this is Andrew, and welcome back to another one of my devlogs for Andrew RPG, my massive 2D continuously simulated RPG game. I didn't work on the game much this week, but I did work on it some yesterday, and originally I was planning on working on my weather system and combat, and I did get pretty far in the weather system, so I can show you the end result here. This is just some rain, and we also have the ability to change some cloud coverage and set some wind speed. But then I didn't get too much further than this. And additionally, instead of working on the combat system, I ended up adding split screen co-op to the game. So yeah, pretty much par for the course for how I work on things is, I ended up finding a bug with my player input, which made me refactor a bunch of stuff. And then at some point I said, how hard would it be to add split screen co-op? It was way harder than I thought. There's a lot of things to think about. Essentially, you're like rendering the game twice, but some things you want to do twice and some things you don't. And some settings you need to duplicate and some you don't. So for instance, like the top screen can zoom in and out and change items. And the bottom screen can, I guess I'll just go grab the controller for it real quick. The bottom screen can do its own thing, so they don't have to be confined to whatever the top screen does. You can also kill the first player, but I wouldn't recommend that. I don't know what happens. So yeah, we're going to do things a little out of order. I'm going to go straight into some footage from yesterday, and then I went on a little bit of a rant about my weather system, and I'm going to throw that at the end because it's a little more dry. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoy. It's about noon right now. I started coding around like 8 a.m. today. Haven't gone too crazy. I was trying to decide whether or not I wanted to work on the combat system or keep working on the weather system. I worked on the weather a little bit during the week, maybe just a few hours. Added this IM GUI for the weather so we can turn on the rain and mess with the cloud coverage and the wind speed, stuff like that, whenever we want to. I'm like pretty content with where I'm at with the rain. I think it's something that I'm going to keep changing throughout the entire development cycle just because I don't think it looks perfect, but my particle system doesn't support exactly what I want to do yet, and I don't know how crazy I want to go. So instead of continuing to work on the weather today, I decided, I'm going to turn this rain off. It's a little distracting. I decided I'm going to work on the combat a bit. So right now, the animals in the game, only the wolves can actually attack, and how it works is when they're close to an animal, they just instantly deal damage to it. And since the game happens on a very quick update cycle, the damage just very quickly kills anything that they're standing next to, and then they can eat it. So what I want to do is slow that down a bit, add in animation. So when a wolf is next to a sheep, and by animation, I mean like very, very basic animation. I actually have it working right now. When the wolf is next to a sheep, it'll just sort of bounce over to that tile. It's a little jittery right now, but part of the issue I have is that when they attack, I need them to not also be able to request movement, because right now it'll attack and request to move. And so under the hood, it actually moves while attacking and then kind of like snaps back into place. Baby wolves can't deal damage, so this sheep actually just doesn't really even care that it's being attacked. But yeah, so I want to kind of sort that out a bit today, and then maybe add it so that the wolves will attack the player, and then I want things to react to getting attacked a little bit better. Like, even though this isn't dealing any damage, it would be nice if this baby sheep just, started like woke up first of all, and then just sort of like walked away. So I'm gonna keep working on that. All right, I've just fixed up the attacking, so now if you're attacking something and it moves, you won't be able to attack again until you move to the tile that you want to attack from. So looks a little weird with how fast the wolf moves and how slow the sheep moves, but At least it's... Oh, and now he's attacking this one. At least it's smooth compared to jumping around like it was before. So I think I'm okay with that. It's Sunday. I have a little confession to make. Yesterday, I did not end up working on the combat system or the weather system. I started the day and I went up to a tree and I cut it down. And I just wanted to make sure everything in the game still worked as I expected it to. And I went over to my plank and I went to make a fence, just like I love doing. And something peculiar happened. I wasn't able to switch from the plank setting to the fence setting. And then I realized that how I control humans in the game is with this like external input class, and I just kind of set it up as like some sort of like external overlord because it was convenient and it was fast, and I didn't need it to be more complex at the time. But then I also added all of these houses which have humans in them. Okay, this one's got wolves in it. Okay, some of these houses have humans in them, and because where are they actually? Let me restart. I'll get a human to show you. But because there were other humans in the game, besides me, when I would go to do some input action, okay, there's no humans. Oh my fuck! God damn it! Are you serious? Oh, it's this bug again? How? They're invisible. Alright, take two. I'm going to turn on the rain because it was a little sad that the humans weren't there the first time. Bang! Okay. So, like I was saying, what was happening was that you go and you chop down a tree and you get a log, and then you go to switch to plank, and that input where I say, hey, I would like to switch this to a plank, it was actually getting essentially like consumed by another human in the world first. And this is something that I knew I was going to have to do, but also I knew was not going to make a good video, which is that I needed to make it so all of the inputs for humans are unique to the human, if that makes sense. You can kind of essentially think of it like every human needs like a physical controller or mouse and keyboard, but they need to be unique. They can't share it. And then maybe there needs to be some special input to like identify the main player so that there aren't some conflicts. And then additionally, like the AIs aren't going to actually use a controller to move necessarily. We can talk about that later. But anyway, so I needed to refactor a lot of stuff to make this more legitimate. And as I was working on that system and fixing the bug first of all, but then second of all, reworking how I do input so it's unique to the human, I thought, oh, okay, well, I might as well see what it's like to just have two players play the game at the same time. And yeah, I thought it would be interesting just to have two players play the game and see how difficult that was. It seemed like it should be pretty straightforward once I have all the humans controlled by controllers. Sorry, all the humans have their individual inputs with unique controllers. I could just make another human, assign them to a different controller, and then one person could use the mouse and keyboard, and the other person could use a controller. But then I started thinking about like, well, what would multiplayer gameplay, like couch co-op, look like? If I just threw another player down on the screen right here, like you couldn't see their health, you couldn't see their energy, their food, sleepiness. They wouldn't have their own inventory to see. And what happens if they just wander off screen? Who do I focus the camera on? So I decided to add split screen. I don't know. Yeah, so this is what I did instead of working on on the combat system or whether I added split screen to the game, and it's fully functional, and you would, well, maybe you would not even be surprised at how many bugs happen when you try to do something like this. Yeah, the game does a bunch of black magic to work because remember, there's like shit tons of stuff running all the time. And when you want to render two different spots of the world at the same time on the same machine and not break anything, it turns out a lot of my systems needed to be refactored. Like, for instance, just taking into account, yeah, there's a lot of stuff. I don't want to get too into it, but I think I've ironed out all of the kinks. And you should be able to play co-op now. So how it works right now is you press M, it goes to multiplayer. It just adds a second player in a screen. But it brings me to my point now, which is that when you go into multiplayer, you can see that the UI gets squished in the top left. And I actually have a feature to fix this. So I'm going to go sort that out real quick. Okay, just sorted out the UI. A while ago, I added two options for my UI elements. I can either pin them to a certain spot or a certain relative position on the screen, or I can have them like smart offset from other UI elements. So I changed the 3 fillable bars to all offset smart from each other. So now when we go into multiplayer, they don't overlap. They just all offset. And the reason you need to do that is because you're essentially rendering like 2 HUDs now, but they're half the height. So you can still anchor the hearts in the same relative position, but everything else that's based off that needs to be relative to that instead of just like some hard set value. All right, I've just added one more necessary thing for my multiplayer system, which is that you'd want to be able to play with 2 controllers, or potentially you'd want to play with keyboard and mouse and a controller, maybe somebody sitting next to you if you don't have 2 controllers. Like myself, I have 2 PlayStation controllers, but I don't have 2 cables to plug them in. So if let me just have the now. If I go to multiplayer mode, right now, the first player uses the keyboard and mouse, and the second player is actually set up to use the second controller, which is not ideal because what that means essentially is that if I plug in a controller, which I just did, the controller also just controls player 1, and now the mouse does nothing. So I've just added this mode where I can toggle the multiplayer mode to player 1 uses keyboard and mouse, which means I now need to use the keyboard and mouse to exit this screen also. So now player 1 uses the keyboard and mouse, and player 2 will use what is essentially controller 1. So here I am on the controller, and the second player should be pretty much the exact same as the first player. I do see some bugs though. Not going to worry about that right now. Chop, chop, chop. And yeah, it's pretty... Oh. Player 2 actually can't zoom in and zoom out for some reason. Okay, back in the game, I have the zooming working now. So the bottom and the top can zoom independent of each other. Although I have one final bug here, which is that the second player, the buildings don't render for them, so they can just see inside of them. Need to sort that out somehow. Okay, 3rd or 4th time is the charm here. I'm once again gonna turn on a little bit of rain, a little bit of cloud, set the mood for the bug that's surely gonna come. So we go into multiplayer, we change to player 1 is keyboard and mouse, and player 2 is the controller. So I still have player 1 access, and I can see the buildings. Everything looks here. Let me try to go inside of 1. Cool. And then player 2 should be able to, yeah, it should be faded because player 1's in that building, but perfect. The other buildings should not be faded. And it looks like everything is working. So, yeah, essentially I have like couch co-op or split screen working. Yeah, I really just, I don't know how this always happens, and I end up in these sorts of situations where I just do something that I did not expect to do at all. And usually they're like not fun tasks in the slightest. So I really don't know why my brain is totally okay with doing them, but hey, it happens, and here we are. I mean, it's pretty cool. I think that there are still some improvements I can make here. Like, it's a little bit distracting how the two views like fade or seamlessly go together. I think that when you're in the split screen mode, it would probably benefit from like some sort of border on your screen, just so there's maybe like a better delineation for your brain to sort of say like, this is my screen, don't pay attention to the other screen. But the game feels pretty fine to play on half the screen. It's pretty cool, and I actually think that the more I think about it, this game would be probably a lot of fun to play couch co-op, just because there's a lot to explore and see, and yeah, having somebody help you along or just be in that journey with you would be a good time. So yeah, I think I'm all done with this for now. Maybe I will go back and do some combat. I kind of feel like I want to do the trading now, because now I can properly test like, this is what happens when you trade another player. That's kind of crazy. Actually, is trading just totally busted the screen in split screen? Okay, so yeah, this kind of shows you like, I've added split screen, and now I've also added just a tremendous amount of extra work to make sure, or just a lot of extra things I need to ensure never get broken. So, hey, I just added this new feature. Okay, does it break split screen? Yeah, good question. So, yeah, move on to the next thing. So first up is some footage of me getting IMGUI to work with my weather system. I crashed here the first couple times, but this IMGUI system has been super important to my development. It's let me iterate super quickly on especially visual aspects of my game where I don't necessarily know which values are going to look the best for something, like how much rain should fall on the screen, how many particles should there be. Like, these are hard values to get right the first time, and being able to test multiple values without leaving the game is like vital for any sort of sane development speed. But while I roll some footage in the background of me messing around with the particle system, I just wanted to give a brief overview of why the weather system is so important in my game. Let's start with the goal for the weather system, which is to promote organic biomes. And there's 3 things that play into creating these biomes organically. So the first thing is the temperature system in the game, which has 2 factors. The first is that when it's below freezing and it rains, that rain will fall as snow, and the snow will cover the grass, which will prohibit animals that eat grass from eating the food there, which will make them either die or migrate south. And the second role that temperature plays is that if it's very hot and the ground is wet, the excess moisture on the ground will evaporate much quicker, which makes the southern areas of the game more arid naturally. So any amount of excess moisture just goes away. So if you don't have plants that are using it, you'll just essentially lose it. The second thing that's very important to the game is the precipitation itself. So how water works in my game is that it flows from rivers and the ocean into the adjacent ground tiles. And then as those ground tiles become saturated with water, they flow into other adjacent ground tiles, so on and so forth, and it slowly moves inward. What this means is that the further inland you are, the less likely you are to be wet, which just means the only reliable way for you to get moisture is for it to rain on you, which is very cool because it naturally promotes things like trees and heavy vegetation by rivers and oceans, where more inland it could potentially promote desert environments or just plants that require a lot less water. And then the third final part of the weather system that is maybe doesn't seem as important as the other two, but promotes some chaos in the system is the seasons. So what the seasons will do is they will naturally raise or lower the average temperature. So in the summer, everything's a little bit hotter, and in the winter, everything's a little bit colder. And what that means in terms of gameplay is as you transition from the winter where everything is cold to the summer where it snows, the snow line of the game will it'll creep further north, and then as you go from the summer back to the winter, it'll creep back down south. And this naturally will reveal grass that hasn't been eaten for animals and may also eventually promote migration. So yeah. I realize this is a bit more than a brief explanation, but I hope this helps you understand what the end goal is here. So now I'm going to cut back to what I did yesterday. And like I said, the video is a little out of order, so thanks so much for watching. If you made it this far, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.